All right, so have you heard the recent news in the world of gaming? So, a video game company called Valve came out with a video game console called the Steam Machine, right? A Steam Machine. And everybody on the internet is freaking out about this because the price of the Steam Machine is at $1,049, right? I mean, this isn't like the best computer in the world, but I'm looking at the specs and, I'm not like a hardware guru or anything, but they look pretty good, right? I know I have a much better computer than this, and I think I bought it for $2,000, but everybody's freaking out about the prices. And just because the prices of consoles historically have been around like the 300 to 500 range. And so because it's literally doubled than what most people expect, everybody's freaking out about this. Now, here's why I'm not freaking out about this. It's because I know how to pay off debt. And we know how to pay off debt. Your mind thinks very, very differently about money and prices. And you realize, hey, if I have a lot of credit, I have cash flow. Yeah, an extra purchase like this, $1,049, not a big deal. But everybody else is freaking out about this, right? $1,049. And this is probably the same crowd that would buy a new iPhone for $1,000. I actually don't know how much iPhone costs, but I'm just assuming it's $1,000. That's not really that different from the previous iPhone, but they'd still buy it. They wouldn't complain because Apple has built a brand that commands that price, even though the quality of that product, may not be good. In fact, I remember, random story when I got my first Apple product. I think it was a iPhone 5C, and it had a really cool green case, and I love that case, right? I was really shocked because the official plug, not a third party plug, the official plug broke down in like 2 months. And Apple knows this, and everybody knows this, and they still keep buying Apple products. It's very amazing to me how, the human mind wants to be rational at certain times, like, $1,000 Steam machine, but when it comes to $1,000 iPhone, that just goes out the door. But anyways, let me get back to my point. When you know how to pay off debt, and you look at, $1,000, let's say, video game console, which is kind of like a computer nowadays, um, you're like, "Oh, no big deal. I mean, it's just put it on a credit card and then easily pay it off," right? So, and I'll tell you why a lot of people are acting this way, okay? So let's say you have $6,000 of income, 4,080 four $4,846.11 of expenses. And in your checking account, you have $1,100 left over. Now, let's say you wanted to buy a steam machine, right? So the steam machine price is about $1,000 or 1,049. Well, if you did actually buy it in this month's budget, then it would almost feel like the end of the world because you have so little left over, right? And that's how the average American budgets and how they do their banking, where they're always purchasing things out of their checking and savings. And so if they need to make any additional purchases on top of what they have, then it feels like the end of the world. So you can see, I buy the steam machine today. I have like a couple dollars left over. Oh no, I have $100 expense. I'm screwed, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do banking differently. So let's say we do have a one-time $1,000 purchase that we need to make. Okay, all right, well, let's go ahead and make it. And then you'll see it'll almost make no difference in our life. And I'm going to show you how we do this using something called the velocity method. So if you take a look at the budget right here, right? We have our income, expenses, leftover checking and savings, and then we do an expense breakdown and list every single debt that we have, right? 3 credit cards, an auto loan, student loan, a mortgage, and on top of that, we have our personal expenses not tied to debt. So imagine that if you were debt free, what would you still have to pay for? Food, gas, insurance, and all that other good stuff. Okay, and so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna copy our income and expenses, right? And so the whole premise is that, hey, we don't need to necessarily make more money, even though making more money is great. It's just that maybe the way that we're doing banking was a little bit inefficient, and we're gonna just change the flow of money. And by simply changing the flow of money, we can actually just pay off debt quickly. And even if we have a one-time, $1,049 steam machine purchase, it's not a big deal because we've learned to do a couple of things. One, get a lot of credit, right? So if you have like $100,000 line of credit, Okay, an extra 10, $1,000 purchase is not a big deal, right? But because people are using the direct cash that they have as their main source of, let's say, buying things, they have to be very, very, very exact. Whereas what we're going to do is just work on approximations, right? That's kind of the whole beauty of the system. Yes, you do have to budget wisely. Like, don't be an idiot in the sense that you're going to spend, $20,000 a month, but you only make $1,000. Your income is only $1,000, right? We're not going to do stupid things like that. We're going to be sensible, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna change the flow of money so that, hey, if a new steam machine comes out and we're paying off debt, that new steam machine's not gonna be a problem. Okay. So I'll show you what I mean by that. And so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna make a simple change. So on the left side, the real only difference is that the checking account is the final destination for money. And when I tell that to people, I think, we deep down inside, we know that that's just so normal that to think of an alternative as like the checking or saving should be the final destination of money seems kind of weird. Okay. So what we're going to do with the velocity method is that we're not going to save any money at all. And the final destination of our money is something called a line of credit. Okay. A line of credit. And so really the difference between the left side and the right side is that the checking account is seen as a temporary stop in our for our money in the velocity method, whereas in the average American banking method, it's basically the final destination. That's really all it is. So, in order to help us not save money, we need something called a line of credit. So, what is a line of credit? Well, it's basically a financial tool where you can borrow money, pay back, and then use it over and over again, right? So, let's assume we had a $50,000 line of credit. That means I could go to the bank's website, I could click a button and borrow up to $50,000 and then put it in my checking account, and it's there like 1 second later. It's not even like a day later, you know? Sometimes we get so used to like banking processes happening a day later, but with the line of credit, it just happens like 1 millisecond later. It's crazy, right? Even with cash advances, I don't think they give cash advances on credit cards like 1 millisecond. Or do they? I don't know. I used a cash advance once. They charged me $40 on a credit card just to use a cash advance. But with the line of credit, they don't charge you for withdrawing the money from the line of credit. Now, you might be wondering, well, why do we use a line of credit and put all of our money in a line of credit? Because it is the only financial tool from the bank where I could put my entire paycheck into that line of credit and then take our expenses out. And and you can't even do that with the credit card, even though credit card is technically a form of line of credit. So, for example, if I put this entire $6,000 in this credit card, can I use this credit card to pay the other credit cards and the other loans? No. But with the line of credit, I can do that. See, like you just gotta use the right tool for the right situation, and the line of credit is the ultimate tool for that situation. Okay, it's the ultimate. You get the ultimate flexibility. There's two real main benefits to the line of credit. Number one, you can put the money in, take the money out. You can't even do that with the credit card. You certainly can't do that with the loan because the loan is a one-way street. And then advantage number two is the interest rates are usually lower than credit cards, right? They're higher than loans usually, and that's not really a big problem as much as one would think so, but they're lower than the credit cards. And so what we can do is just do some neat tricks where, hey, if we take these 30 to 20% credit cards and move them into 8% line of credit, you'll be amazed at how much cash flow you can create. Okay. So here's the trick. Okay. If you have a lot of debt, not that much left over, and you go to a bank and you say, hey, I want a $50,000 home equity line of credit because I got a home. Will you lend that to me? The bank will usually say no in this situation because you have a lot of debt and very little money left over, because you have to understand the bank's perspective. Banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay. So, according to the bank and their institutional thinking, people who need money equals bad. They will never tell you that in their commercials, but they have a whole credit system to help keep track of people who don't pay their bills, because they know that people who don't pay their bills don't pay you back, right? People who don't, you miss a payment 90 days, That's like the ultimate sin to a bank. And the way that the bank knows that they shouldn't lend to you is that if you go to them, you need money because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? People who need money, according to a bank, are the same people who will never pay you back. Okay. So I don't know if you ever had that experience when friends and family ask you for money and say, "Hey, can you lend me $10, $20? I really need it." And then you do it and you never get paid back. It's because you didn't have the bank's human translator, right? The words "I need money" means "I won't pay you back." That's why banks don't lend money to people who need it. Now you might be wondering, well, why do we use a free and clear line of credit? It's just for educational purposes only. Because if you had a free and clear line of credit, this would have saved you. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And then you'll understand the importance of the method, doing things the right way, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so let's assume we have a $50,000 line of credit. And by the way, as a person who has over $700,000 in lines of credit, I think I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So, anyways, let me get back to my point. What we're gonna do is move some debts into the line of credit and free up our cash flow. And the easiest way to figure out which debts to move is using something called the cash flow index. If you don't know what the cash flow index is, basically an easy formula where you have the balance of the debt and divide by the monthly payment, right? So 5,000 divided by 175. And then you get this arbitrary ranking system. And then so what you do is you take the smallest to largest. That's the way that you know how to pay off debt, right? And what do these numbers mean, right? What do the small numbers mean? What do the big numbers mean? The small numbers mean that you need to pay these off quickly because you get a lot of bang for your buck for paying off these debts. Whereas this large number means that you got to pay this debt off last. Okay. So basically, this mortgage, $250,000, right? If I pay this $250,000 mortgage, I only get $1,000 back in my cash flow. Whereas I can pay these 3 credit cards and I could get almost $1,000. So why wouldn't I just pay these 3 credit cards, which is like 28 grand, I think. Yeah, 28 grand, 3 credit cards for versus 250,000 for the same amount, right? It doesn't make sense. That's what the big number means. So what we're going to do is take these small numbers, especially below 50, right? Because the lower number, the better. We're going to move into a line of credit. And how much credit card debt is this? So this is 5, 8, 15. And then I'm going to go ahead and sum it up. So that's $28,000 into the line of credit. Okay. Now, what happens when we move that debt into the line of credit? Well, think of it as kind of like a balance transfer, right? Credit card balance transfer. So if we balance transfer all these credit cards, what happens to the payments? 0, 0, 0. Oh my goodness. You're telling me I created a steam machine out of thin air? I'm able to purchase a steam machine out of thin air? So this $1,049 is not a big deal? I don't have to make clickbait thumbnails about this? You know, if I buy notice how if I buy that steam machine with my checking and savings, it seems like the world is gonna end because you have a little margin, right? Whereas if we're consolidating things and moving some debts into the line of credit, now we have an extra $1,000 cash flow. See how that works? Yeah. It seems like a scam, doesn't it? So you take a look here. I mean, 1,000 to 2,000 or 1,100 actually. So 1,100 to 2,000. So when you take a look at this, now are you freaking out about the Steam price? No. Look at it. Everybody's all freaking out. Everybody's freaking out about that Steam price, right? And I get it. You shouldn't make these splurge purchases all the time. But I'm just saying, if you really want a Steam machine and you had $1,000 left over, okay, it's not a big deal. Now, again, if this is the difference between you eating and not eating, that's a totally different story. But I think for a lot of people, they just don't know how to manage their finances, right? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and keep going. So this is the part where if I'm going to introduce the velocity method to friends and family, I want them to stare at this, right? This is the part where you have to stare at this for a good 30 minutes because you're wondering, how is this even possible? And I'm telling you that it's the same income, right? We didn't increase our income because that's kind of like how we demonstrate whether this strategy actually works or not, is we just have same income. We kind of shift our expenses, right? We shift them. You know, some people might call it creative accounting, although I heard the term creative accounting could land you in jail. So let's not call it that. But we just kind of shift some expenses into another debt, right? And then here's the final step. Okay. We're going to put our entire paycheck, this entire $6,000 into the line of credit, take our expenses out, and then rinse and repeat over and over again. 20, 76, 30, 39, right? So that means after every single month, the balance of the line of credit should go down about $2,000. Only about $2,000, okay? And so let's actually do this. So let's say 28,000 is our current balance, right? Well, why don't we just buy a new steam machine, right? Like a one-time purchase plus 1049, right? That's the cost of a steam machine. Let me just take a look at this. Okay. Yeah, 1049. Everybody's freaking out. Steam machine. 1049, right? 1049. So let me go back here. We're going to buy one steam machine and see if it really and actually let's just do a comparison, okay? So what we're gonna do is we'll buy a steam machine here and then see if it makes a difference, probably just like 1 month, if any, to our debt payoff situation. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the previous month's balance, the previous month's interest to find out the next month's balance, right? We add them up and then we subtract what we do is we subtract the cash flow, 2076.39. And then in order to get the interest, it's based on the average daily balance, multiply by the interest rate, and then divide by 12. And then that's $186.74 of interest. Now, let me just kind of make a quick, just kind of look at the quick difference between these. So let's say we didn't make the steam machine purchase, right? So $186.74 with the steam machine. Without the steam machine, okay, it's about like an $8 difference. You see that? So let me go back. So let's go ahead and now copy paste. And then now let's see when we paid off all that credit card debt. So that's month 15. Okay. Month 15. All right. So now let's compare this as if we never bought the steam machine, right? Like we saved money. We were so like, oh my goodness, I need to save money, right? I'm going to do this. Still paid off in 15 months, right? So yes, it could have been possible that it might have taken 1 more month, but in this case, it did not. It still took 15 months, right? So we literally could have bought a steam machine at $1,049, and the amount of time it would have taken to pay off that debt would have been exactly the same. Exactly the same, right? So let's go ahead and include the steam machine, right? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to pay off these 3 debts because these are the only 3 debts to main, the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage. And then let's take a look. So month 15 is when we paid off the debt. So 15 months. And what is this? And 29K. We'll say 29K. It's technically 29,049 because you know how they do pricing like consumer products. They always like to put a 9 or a 7 at the end. I don't know why. Maybe if I price something, I'll just put it at a 7. All right. So now we did that here. Okay. And then we have the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our loan calculator, right? So we have this loan calculator right here. Okay. And what we have to do is when we're trying to compute things, we have to always put the original balance, the interest rate, and the term. It'll spit out a payment, right? And then once we put the current month, then it has the latest balance, and we can also calculate the cash flow index, right? So a lot of people, when they look at loans, this is all what they focus on. Only one thing, that interest rate, right? And you can't just focus on the interest rate. Finance is a holistic type of deal, right? Like so many people just get caught up on the interest rate. Yes, the interest rate does matter, but it's just one factor that matters. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to use the cash flow index as our main way of knowing which debt to pay off. And so the lowest one is the one we want to pay off. And so you take a look here. Why do we want to pay this one off? Well, it's because we pay 16 grand for $400 of cash flow, or do we pay 36 grand for almost a similar amount? I'm literally almost paying double or even more than double for the same amount of cash flow if I focus on the 7%, at least at this time, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this debt, get that cash flow, and then apply it to the 7%, right? So I'm going to move this 16 grand into the line of credit. So let's go ahead and do that. So that'll be plus 16904.71. Okay. And so what that means is now that the auto loan, the current balance of the auto loan is now 0, and then we have $400 back in our cash flow. So $2,481.56. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy it and paste this. I'm going to, whoopsie, go here. And so we're going to update this cash flow 2481.56. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then we see that in 22 months, we paid off that debt. Okay. So 22 months, and then that'll be 29 plus 22. So that's 51K. All right. So we're almost at the home stretch. So then the next one is a student loan. So again, this is going to be 0 now. And then we just put in the current month, which is month 22. And then we follow the same principle, lowest cash flow index. Now, ideally, if you're going to move the entire loan into line of credit, you want that CFI to be under 50, right? So 15 to 100 is like a caution zone, and over 100 is don't ever move the loan into line of credit unless it's like the same interest rate or higher. Now, if you have a very similar interest rate, it's not a big deal, but I'll especially show with the 30-year mortgage why you don't want to move an entire loan into a line of credit unless the interest rate of the loan is the same or higher than the line of credit, right? And you will, in general, lines of credit interest rates are higher than loan interest rates. And the reason why is because the interest rate represents mainly two things. Number one is the risk of the borrower, right? So if, you're a risky borrower, you've been making late payments, they usually call that subprime. It means you're a risky borrower, right? So they have to charge you more on the interest rate to make up for account for the risk in case you don't pay your payments, right? Reason number two, why they charge higher interest rates in a line of credit is because you have more access to the money. So when you have, like, let's say a 3% loan, a loan is a one-way street, right? So if I overpay the loan, I don't get what I pay back. I can't get back what I overpaid. That's just the nature of the beast. And because the bank knows this, it's willing to charge you a lower interest rate. Like, you just can't pull it out. But with the line of credit, because you can pull it out whenever you want, they have to charge you higher for that. So think of it like when you go to a website and then, they have, it's like the difference between the version of Netflix where they only allow you to access it in like business hours, 9 to 5 versus 24/7, right? If they had two versions like that, where the 24/7 is more expensive than the one that is only available from 9 to 5 business hours, then that would make sense because you have more access to, like, watching Netflix. Same thing with the bank. You have more access to your money, so therefore they're going to charge you more, right? People will always charge you more for more access. And that's true pretty much anything from restaurant reservations to, what else? Well, that's one thing, just reservations, exclusivity, access. You always pay more for that. Anyways, all right, so let me go back here. So this is the balance of the debt, which is 34 grand, right? So because the interest rate's very similar, I feel comfortable moving it into an 8% line of credit, okay? But we do have to be careful about the interest rates when we're moving entire loans, especially when it's lower interest rate loans, into the line of credit. All right, so now we're gonna move this entire student loan into the line of credit, okay? And then guess what happens here? All right, I'll show you what happens here. This student loan goes to zero. And so we get an extra $464 back in our cash flow. So our cash flow is now $3,000. Okay, it's literally $3,000. So almost, no, it's not literally 3,000. It's almost $3,000. Almost literally. Okay, I want to say literally because it sounds cool. It's like a what do you call it? Almost like an exclamation point. Now I can't even speak English, but you know what I mean. All right, so now this is 2945.99, And then what we got to do is just update this, and then you see, whoa, 35 months has got paid off. All right, sweet. All right, so now 35 months. So that's going to be 51 plus 40, 91K. And then now we just do the 30-year mortgage. So 35 months, what's the balance of the 30-year mortgage? $234,328.59. Now, why do we not move a low interest rate mortgage, a 3% mortgage, into a line of credit? I'll tell you why. So what does this cash flow index number mean? It really means, hey, you have a lot of money that you borrowed for a small payment or relatively small payment. So usually, okay, if we have these low cash flow index numbers, you'll notice like, hey, we can move that 4% into an 8 because you'll get a good amount of cash flow. And so the interest rate is not really going to be that significant to this. But when it comes to a 30-year mortgage, you're borrowing a ton of money at 3. You only get a little bit of cash flow if you move it into a line of credit, and you're moving. So you're basically moving the whole thing into an 8 for only a little bit amount of cash flow, right? So again, interest rate's not the only thing that matters, but it is one factor that does. All right. But here's what other people don't know. Okay. They don't know that you can actually partially pay off loans with the line of credit, do it over and over again, and do it with a 3 and an 8. And this is the part that might blow your mind. Okay. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to overpaying your last debt, which is your 30-year mortgage, you have 2 options, right? So number 1 is the default option of extra payments, meaning that you put your you make the monthly payment, and then whatever is in your extra cash flow or extra checking, you just dump that as an overpayment. Okay. Now, the reason why a lot of people struggle with this is the same reason why a lot of people struggle with overpaying credit cards. It's pretty much the exact same reason. You know, I gave the example before. If I put my entire paycheck into a credit card, what's the issue? Well, I can't use that credit card to pay the other credit cards or the other loans. Now, given that this is the last debt, you're not going to face this issue. Okay. But the reason why the debt payoff journey was so easy, because all we did was just put our money into one place, and we didn't save it, and we can easily take it out. And that's why, you know, you might want to still use a line of credit at this stage to pay off your debt, even with an 8 to 15% line of credit to pay off that 2 to 3% debt. Okay. So let me just kind of show you here. Okay. Let me show you this, right? So let me see if I have the right numbers. So what's the current balance? It's 234,328.49. So let's just do this. All right. So, whoopsie. 234,328.59. 234,328.59. Okay. And so I think I have everything correct here. Let me just quickly check. Income is 6,000. Expenses, except for the loan we're trying to pay off, is 2,000. Okay, we're good. So let me just show you something. So let's say we take a piece of the loan, move it into line of credit, and just constantly repay it off over and over again. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is what it's going to look like. Okay, so this is your line of credit. You do an extra payment or overpayment of the mortgage, $6,000 from the line, and then you rinse and repeat that process, and you see that it got paid off in about 2 months, right? So there are people out there who claim that this is going to be the worst decision of your life because you're using a higher interest rate tool for a lower interest rate loan, okay? But you can see right here that we paid off in 5.4 years, and it's the interest that we pay is 20 grand, right? So we only paid 20 grand of interest. Now let me show you something, okay? Because those same people who freak out, literally freak about, oh, this is an 8% line of credit, because that's what we have here. They don't know what they're talking about, right? Especially if we're just doing it in pieces. They call it chunking. I call it sweeping. That's my new word, sweeping, right? We're sweeping $6,000 into a line of credit, putting our paycheck and expenses out. Now, what if I said, okay, well, if this is the worst thing in the world, 8%, and we're paying 20 grand in interest, what if you somehow found a magical unicorn of a 1% line of credit? 1% line of credit. So remember, 5.4 years, we pay 20 grand in interest. 1% line of credit. Oh, you mean it's still 5.4 years and now we just pay 19 grand? So literally just made a a difference of a steam machine, okay? That's the actual difference between 1 and 8 is a steam machine, essentially, right? So, people over exaggerate because they don't know what they don't know, but I'm gonna tell you one other thing too, they over exaggerate in the other way because, you have a lot of people who teach this and say, "Hey, always move a loan into a line of credit because a loan is bad." Right? You'll hear people say that. And I'm gonna show you something. If I move this entire loan into a line of credit and the loan interest rate was higher than the line of credit interest rate, but you're never gonna find one at 1%, or I don't think you will. You pay 6 grand and it's 5.1 years. Okay. Now let's do this. Let's just increase that interest rate. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So people confuse moving the entire loan into the line of credit and the interest rates versus partially doing it. They're two completely different things. And in fact, there's a very low chance that you're going to even be able to replace your loan with the line of credit anyways, for most people, I think, in my opinion. And so, even if we do a 30% credit card, or 30%, I don't think a 30% line of credit even exists, but let's just assume we did. You'll see that we will never pay this off. All right. But here's the crazy thing: small pieces, small sweeps, even with the 30%, 26 grand and 5.6 years. Right. So yes, the interest rate does matter. So if we want to go to 8, yeah, it's a 6 grand difference. Interest rate does matter, but it's not the only factor. And that's what I want to emphasize. All right, so now it's 5.4 years. So let's go ahead and do this. 5.4. I'm going to go ahead and do 0. 35 divided by 12 plus 5.4. And that's going to be 40.52. Actually, whoopsie, what did I do? I think I screwed up. Hold on, this is 0. So it's 35 divided by 12 plus 5.4. Okay, 8.32 years. And then we are debt free. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. Freelance mentorship here with another video. And if you want to let me know you made it to the end of the video, and what time is it? Oh my goodness, we are at the 32-minute mark. So if you want to let me know you made it to the end of the 30 something minute mark, just type in the comment box below. Yeah, just type in the comment box below that the $1,049 Steam machine doesn't scare me. Okay. It does not scare me because we saw that when we're using it in the very beginning to pay off the debt, it literally took the same amount to pay off that credit card debt, whether we bought a Steam machine or not. Okay. Okay. Well, have a great day, everybody. I'll see you all in the next video.